Labor has won a comfortable victory in the South Australian election, ousting the Liberal government after just one term that was dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic. By late on Saturday night, Labor had won at least 25 seats, one more than is required to form a majority government. Incoming Premier Peter Malinauskas thanked the people of South Australia in a powerful victory speech. As it happened, SA Election 2022. Peter Malinauskas celebrates victory in the SA Election 2022. I think sometimes on election nights when governments change hands, that the successful party can confuse the elation of electoral success with an inflated sense of achievement, he said. True satisfaction for us comes in realizing our ambition of delivering a fairer, better society and more opportunity for those who need it most. He paid tribute to outgoing Premier Stephen Marshall, who is at risk of losing his own seat in the election, speaking of a conversation they had after Labor's victory became clear. Stephen Marshall's call was utterly generous, gracious, and it was done with the class that we have become incredibly familiar with. Stephen Marshall has been the leader of the Liberal Party in South Australia for 9 years. That includes 4 as Premier. It is a significant contribution to his party and to our state. After 2 challenging years of COVID-19 and a campaign focused on healthcare, Mr. Malinauskas paid tribute to every doctor, every nurse, every hospital orderly. They've all served us so incredibly well in the pandemic. A particular shout out tonight to our Ambos. He shared a touching story of a family he met outside a polling station in Woodville Gardens, Syrian refugees, who became Australian citizens 6 months ago. They came from a town just outside of Aleppo, where their home was only a few years ago. Everything they had was lost. They fled to Lebanon, where they waited for 4 or 5 years trying to find a permanent place they could call home. SA Premier Stephen Marshall. It was Australia that opened our heart to this beautiful Syrian family. It struck me, here I was, as the leader of their Labor Party, the alternate Premier of the state, standing next to this beautiful couple, who were voting for the very first time, who came here with nothing to their name, and at that very moment, as we were standing next to each other, our votes were worth exactly the same. Marshall's seat in question, Premier thanks supporters. At the current count, Mr. Marshall is several points behind his Labor opponent in his seat of Dunstan. But he declared victory in the seat nevertheless. Have your say, key issues around the election. Mr. Marshall celebrated the people of his state in his concession speech. I'm just so proud of the way that the people of South Australia have responded to the coronavirus, and not had it break them, not had it destroy them, he said. We come out of this stronger than before, and all South Australians must share in this fantastic result. He did not say whether he would remain as leader of the Liberal Party. Mr. Malinauskas ran a campaign based on adding funding to the beleaguered health system, which had struggled under the strain of the pandemic. Mr. Marshall meanwhile ran a campaign on economic issues. Result came quickly after polls closed. In an era where election winners often take days to become apparent, the result tonight came remarkably quickly. 9 political editor Chris Ullman called a Labor victory by 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 hours after polls closed. The polls in the lead up to the election were close to spot on, with Labor winning 54% of the 2-party preferred votes statewide. Just after 11 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, this is where the tally stood.